26th of August 2013 is the day my life changed, and changed forever. Whilst I was away, I had a complaint in my left ear, but I didn't think an awful lot of it until this blockage in the ear started to become painful. It was really excruciating pain. And then I woke up 3.5 weeks later. I was lying there and I thought I was in the UK because I could hear British voices. And then the reality very quickly came to me that I could not see.
Wow.
Yeah, I just got a little chill right down my back, Rory. I've heard on this podcast the question asked, if you could see again for 5 minutes, etc., what would you want to see? I'd like to know something that you're glad to never see again.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Rory Douglas. I am a man who is blind. I have zero vision, no perception of light or shade.
Rory, you got a beautiful accent. Where's that from?
UK.
Clearly, whereabouts?
Well, originally from Scotland. Mine is the Sean Connery accent, much
Yeah,
to my
don't
wife's
sound as
disgust.
Scottish. Yeah.
No, I lived most of my life in London.
You got the BBC presenter accent going on. It is delicious. I like it very much.
Well, thank you very much.
Rory, you mentioned there that you are blind. So firstly, completely blind, so no light or shade before we find out how you get there. So you're looking at us right now with your eyes open and you're blinking, but it's complete blackout. Like sorry to sound silly, is there nothing? Is there like stars sort of in front of your vision?
Nothing, Angus. So when I close my eyes or open my eyes, it's exactly the same. Zero, zip, nothing.
Why do you still blink? Is it because of habit from before you were blind?
I think it's just a natural part of my condition, but my situation. I've never really thought about that, Dylan, to be honest.
Maybe it's because of air and things in your eyes, like the atmosphere.
Yeah.
You know?
It is like breathing, though. We don't think about blinking. And we should also point out, Rory, because you're about to tell the part of your story, but you had vision and then one day woke up completely blind. Can you take us back to that day?
I can, Angus, yes. I did. I had very good vision, played a lot of sport, had no problems with my vision at all, never worn glasses, contact lenses, or had any vision aids. 26th of August 2013 is the day my life changed, and changed forever. Well, certainly, as far as I'm aware, forever in my lifetime. I was away on holiday with my family up on the Gold Coast. And my wife and kids, fun in the sun, sand between the toes, having a great time in and out of the ocean, Wet and Wild, Warner Brothers Studios, eating too much, just kicking back, just, loving the quality time with the family. And whilst I was away, I had a complaint in my left ear, but I didn't think an awful lot of it because I'd flown to the Gold Coast. And as a lot of people do, I get blocked ears when I travel. So didn't think an awful lot of it until this blockage in the ear started to become painful. I then flew back a week later, following the end of the holiday, and it was really excruciating pain. I went to an emergency doctor on the Saturday, told to essentially go away and see how you were 48 hours later. Went to my regular GP at the time on the Monday. Wasn't able to drive there myself. I couldn't concentrate. I was very distracted by what was going on in and around my ear. Went to the GP, was told to take the script, go home and sleep it off. Went to the chemist, got the script. My wife dropped me home. She went to work. And then I woke up 3.5 weeks later, following what I understand to be going around the house looking for things. What those things were, I have no idea because I don't remember that period of time at all. My brother was living with me at the time. He was over from the UK traveling. He was staying with us. He finished work early and found me in my underwear in one of my kids' rooms, unresponsive.
Wow.
Sorry, I just got a little chill right down my back, Rory.
When I talk about it, I I say it brings back memories because I don't have any memory of that, but I can only imagine what my brother and subsequently my family went through in that period of time leading up to when I awoke. So as I understand it, my brother called my wife because he wasn't able to get through to emergency services because he didn't know what the number was. He didn't realise it was 000 because
Oh,
in
yeah,
the
of
UK it's
course.
999.
Yeah.
I think now, almost 10 years on, that might default. I could be wrong.
Okay. So when someone types in 911 in Australia, it goes to 000.
Yeah.
I don't quote me on that,
Yeah.
Angus, but I think that might be the case. Anyway, so I told my wife that I was unresponsive. She obviously came home from work in somewhat of a rush to find me being blue lighted out on a stretcher to the hospital. She came with me in the ambulance and we got to the hospital. Still unresponsive. She was signing all the paperwork to say operate, do what you got to do, etc., etc. I had brain surgery. I had fluid on the brain. The brain needed to be drained. I had basically the infection was translated to meningitis, brain surgery. Woke up 3.5 weeks later, blind. Long and short of that is that my optic nerves were severed through the infectious disease, meningitis, and the complications surrounding.
Was that from brain swelling that the optic nerve was severed?
That may have been part of that, Dylan. It's a hugely complicated scenario. I've seen a number of neurologists and brain surgeons and GPs and doctors in different specialist fields. And 2 individuals have said to me, I've got more chance of being attacked by a shark and winning the lottery as opposed to what happened to me. That's how rare my scenario was.
We've had a guest, one of our very first guests, Ben Pettingill, has the story of going to in hospital. He had blurred vision at school in class, and then he went to the hospital. I think they gave him a steroid, and he woke up the next day with no vision. Learning from his experience of what that moment was like, trying to read the menu in front of him for the morning hospital run for food. What was your experience like 3.5 weeks later, waking up, not knowing, having any memory of how you got there and not seeing anything? What was that like?
Well, I woke up, obviously rather disorientated with the amount of drugs that I'd been on for the previous 3.5 weeks. Couldn't see, obviously, and all I could hear were voices. And a lot of the voices I could hear were British voices because my wife had called my British family and told them that I'd been unwell and I'd had this surgery and it didn't look good. I was in intensive care for a long period of time. Hence why my mother, my father, my stepfather, my brother was already there. My sister came out to Australia. So I was lying there and I thought I was in the UK because I could hear British voices. And then the reality very quickly came to me that I could not see. And I remember being rather scared, terrified, actually, if I'm totally honest. Just that unknown as to why I couldn't see at that stage. I'd had some crazy dreams. Apparently I was doing a lot of talking during those crazy dreams. And it just was a complete scary, emotional passage of my life, lying in that bed. The only comfort I had at that time was knowing that my family were around me.
What did you know about disability before, you acquired it? Did you have obviously you might have some major representation. I know it sounds stupid, but it's like the Stevie Wonders, like you don't really know much about it. Did you straight away realize that you were blind, going to be blind forever, and what that meant?
Not straight away, Dylan. I didn't know that. I had a number of scans and tests. In the preceding 6 weeks, I remained in hospital, rehabilitation, and as I'd lost a lot of weight, I hadn't moved for a long period of time. The right hand side of my body was immobile. Just learning how to do the small things for myself once again, i.e., putting water into a glass, putting a piece of butter on a piece of toast, being able to walk again, all that sort of stuff, and it became apparent very quickly following the tests that I had that my vision loss, and to the extent of that vision loss, was complete and permanent.
When you're in the coma, was your family, your wife, your, support network, were they informed about possibilities of what might have happened to you, or was it an unknown at that point for them?
Yes, they were informed that for a while it could have gone either way, in terms of surviving the illness and the surgery. And it wasn't until I came out of that coma, and after the drugs had worn off and so on and so forth, I could verbalize as well, say normal, but I could communicate verbally. But of course, that unknown factor of what had happened to me, why did it happen, how did it happen, was going through my head left, right, and centre, along with all the stuff that I remember vividly. The sort of day-to-day life stuff. How am I going to pay the mortgage? How am I going to put food on the table? How am I going to work again, etc., etc., etc. I had a long time lying in that hospital bed, thinking about all those sorts of things, and that was scary too. So the whole scenario was scary for me and for my family and friends who knew me. Obviously, I was very pleased to have awoken from the coma, full stop, so I could be with my family and friends, not in the same capacity as previously because I can't see them. And that, of course, worried me as well. Can't see my wife anymore, can't see my kids growing up, can't do a number of things that I used to do before, and that was before I began to learn to do things differently.
Sticking into that employment story there for a second, it's not something I actually thought about, when doing my research or listening to your story previously. So you don't work in the same capacity or same field that you once did?
I have done some contracting work.
What were you doing?
I work in HR and recruitment.
Okay.
Yeah, that's my field, and I have done some work in that space following my blindness, but not to the degree that I would like to do. So yes, my background is HR and recruitment.
How did your sons adapt to dad with the disability? How old were they at the time?
9 and 4, respectively.
Do you remember, there's ones, I imagine that you're sort of mourning your own loss of sight, but you've also got to switch into dad mode and sort of take care of the family from an emotional point of view.
Absolutely, yes.
How was that transition?
I remember one scenario, particularly, Angus, which was horrible for my son to have to go through. School playgrounds can be testing and challenging at the best of times. I'm sure we've all experienced that in our lifetimes.
Well said, especially when you're disabled.
Of course, yeah, absolutely. And anyway, this particular individual at my son's school had been taking, shall we say, the mickey out of my son because his father was blind. This was in the first week of my son returning to school. And a couple of weeks later, when I went to pick him up with his mother in the car, he was really very upset about the situation. And he was sitting in the back of the car crying. He's only 9 years old this time, and this individual was a year older. And my son was saying, I just want to go and beat him up, Dad. I just want to hit him. I'm so angry with him for being horrible to me about you, etc., etc. And him having to go through that and seeing him and hearing him so upset was really hard for me, because there's nothing he had done wrong. And as I said, school playgrounds can be very horrible. So I had a chat with him in the car. And I said, look, Ollie, this individual is not being nice. He doesn't know what he's talking about. And I understand where you're coming from with your frustration and your upset and your anger. And, you want to seek revenge, but you can't. You mustn't do that. You need to be the bigger man and just say to this individual, you have no idea about my dad. You don't know what's happened, so just go away. And he said, oh, Dad, I don't think I can do that. I said, yes, you can. You'll feel much better for doing so. Just be firm with this individual. And he did. He never touched him again.
That's very impressive by you in that instance. Very vulnerable of you to think like that. How did it feel when your son first got in the car and told you that? Did you feel guilt or helplessness?
I was so sad for him.
What about you though? How did you feel?
How did I feel? Sorry,
Yeah.
Dylan. Well, it was obviously still extraordinarily fresh in my mind with what had recently happened to me. And I was sad that A, it happened to Oliver. B, it would be very difficult for me to go in there and address the situation with the teacher or the headmaster. I need support to do that, and I wasn't really in the right headspace to go and do that. So I was sad, I was upset, I was angry, but I wanted my son to be the bigger man. Because I was thinking at the time, the sooner he does this, the easier it will be for him if it happens again. To my knowledge, it didn't happen again.
Yeah, I bet you that kid regrets it, to be honest. And kids are kids, I've forgiven my kids that bullied me, and I'm sure I said dumb things too, but they probably see me talking about TV, getting bullied all the time, and I know that'd feel horrible. You know what I mean? Yeah, exactly.
There's an instance of life soon after, acquiring your disability. How long did it take you? And a large part of this conversation is going to be around your assistant animal who's at your feet, the wonderful Saul, and Gideon as well, your previous guide dog. But before we get to, having an assistant animal, did you try a cane? Did you try and go without any sort of assistance? Did you, what was the process to be here today with a forward-legged friend?
When I was in hospital, probably about 2 weeks into my recovery program, it was discussed with me and suggested to me by my wife and the hospital that I should contact Guide Dogs Victoria to learn about assistance with mobility. And I realized very quickly that was something that I had to do, because I wanted to get back on my feet as quickly as I possibly could. And with the support and guidance and training with Guide Dogs Victoria, I thought that was the best course of action. So a mobility instructor came and met me a few days later, wonderful lady. And she trained me for that particular individual about 6 months with the white cane. Very slow and steady at first, front door down to the bottom of the driveway, to the post box, back to the front door. And the following week we'd extend it out into the court, to the end of the court, navigating the paths and finding the lumps in the pavement and so on and so forth. And that would gradually extend week on week on week. And I did that for about 6 months with that particular individual. And I was able to get to the local bus stop, which for me at the time was probably about a 20-minute walk. Repetition. Then I changed the instructor, or rather the instructor was changed on me for reasons I can't remember. And I can continue with the cane. Guardians Victoria require individuals to get to a certain level with using the white cane before they could be considered, should they wish to be considered, to be a guide dog handler.
I had no idea about
Yeah, I
that.
didn't know that.
I thought it
Interesting.
was straight to dog. I did not
Yeah.
know that. That's awesome. There you go.
Good learning.
So
Why is that? Sorry.
the reason for that is you have to have a certain amount of willingness,
Yeah, confidence maybe.
confidence,
Yeah, for the dog to understand. Yeah.
be able to navigate yourself, let alone yourself and a dog, and have the confidence is a big word, and have the desire
Yeah.
and the want to get to the bus stop or get to the tram stop or wherever it might be. So I did that with guide dog instructors, 3 of them over the course of 18 months, to get to a bus stop, which was taking my cane about 45 minutes. I always knew that I wanted to get to the level of where I would be considered to be a guide dog handler, which is why I did what I did with the cane. And then I was put on the waiting list. Unknowing to me at the time, my then instructor, lovely lady, had a dog in mind for me, that dog being Gideon, who I met once. She brought him to the house. And it was, let me get my dates right. This was in November 2014. I lost my vision in the August the previous year. So we're talking 15 months or so, give or take. Still working with the cane. And she said to me, if you qualify with your training with Gideon, which I was due to do just before Christmas and early the following year, after the Christmas period, Gideon will become your guide dog. So she'd earmarked him, just seeing me with him, having a quick walk around the block, etc., because she felt the personality was going to be a good fit. Wasn't a quick round the block at all. It was more detailed than that, but that's a nutshell. There's a lot more that goes into that. But the process of training the individual, that training the individual does with the dog. At the time, it was 3 weeks in-house at GDV on Chandler Highway.
Yeah, they're not cheap, are they? They're hard to, the
training to
the
get a
training
dog.
to
Yeah.
get the dog right and all that, which is a bummer, but it takes time. Yeah.
Yeah. So from a dog being born, and then go to a puppy raiser, and then if they are considered suitable, then go to training. It's an 18-month process.
Yeah.
And the current rate to breed, raise, and train one guide dog is about 70 grand.
Exactly. Yeah.
Guide Dogs Victoria were then 10 years ago breeding somewhere between 160 and 180 a year. It's probably well in excess of 250 now, because more and more people are losing their vision. But I trained with Gideon for 3 weeks, and thankfully we passed. But interesting with Gideon, they weren't sure until he actually passed himself with his what they call blind training, as I understand it, to complete the blind training with the dog to get them through to the completed end of their training before they're matched. They didn't think that would happen initially because they thought he was too chilled. But thankfully, he did qualify. We were matched. And he came home with me on the 30th of January, 2015.
You're pretty chill. He's pretty chill. Little chill combo.
Well, yeah, that's all part of the matching process. You know, because I'm quite tall. He's quite a tall dog. He walks at a steady pace, but he can pick up his pace.
That's cool how they match like that. I didn't know that as well.
You know, he's happy to work in metropolitan Melbourne with lifts, escalators, that sort of stuff, as opposed to another dog that might be more suitable to someone who lives in a more rural area.
Yeah, cool. I get
Who
it.
doesn't want to do public transport.
Maybe my dog wants to live in a rural area because I've twice now had to pick up my dog to go on an escalator. Isn't that? I've got a golden retriever, 40 kilos over my shoulder as I take him up an escalator because he's too scared.
Well, I said earlier you're a fit man.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's just because I have to do my dog.
My dog doesn't want to leave anywhere. He just is always being
Saucy.
a dickhead. So
So 2 questions for you before we get stuck into the guide dog. I just want to know how long it takes, because I think everybody has closed their eyes and they've tried to navigate the room, right? Even if it's as a kid or a teen or something, and you close your eyes and you think, hey, can I walk to the fridge? And there's this, you know the room well. It's mapped out in your brain. You've worked it as a kid, for example. But then the moment you close your eyes, you've got this fear and you're sort of clawing at what's in front of you because, you don't, it's that unexpected wall that you know is not there, but you're going to have the fear of it running into something. How long does that take for you when you're in those initial days of using the cane and somebody who has, acquired your disability? How long does it take for the fear to go?
With regard to my house, I was fortunate I lived in my house for 2 years before I lost my vision. So I had a mental layout of the house. I didn't use the cane in the house, did a lot of shorelining, which is essentially the back of your hand running down the walls. You don't use your fingers because you might jab your fingers in the door frames. Back of the hand, down the side of a table, the wall, round the corner. And if you're in a familiar place, you can get familiar reasonably quickly. And of course, if it's a smaller place, it takes less time. In an unfamiliar place, like, for example, guide dogs was for me when I stayed on site, that takes a long time. So you don't necessarily always work your dog. So you practice that as well. Working as an individual without a guide dog, it takes the same amount of time as it does with a guide dog, depending on the environment you're in. Because the dog doesn't know necessarily where they've got to go until you become familiar with that route. So it's a little bit of 6 of one, half dozen of the other, Angus. But it's practice, repetition, confidence in yourself and in your dog and that team, that nurturing, and that continues to grow.
now, just so people can kind of understand, because guide dogs do an incredible job. You've got Saul next to you today. Gideon is now retired. We'll get into that in a sec.
Yeah.
They're not Google Maps. You can't whisper in Saul's ear, I want to go here. Can you explain right now to people listening, we are 3.2 kilometres from the Melbourne cricket ground, right?
Yep.
We're in a place called Collingwood. We are 3 Ks away from the MCG.
Yep.
How do you get there right now? What's your process to get there?
Well, for me, it would be extraordinarily difficult to do that just with Saul.
Okay.
So I would do one of two things. I would follow someone. So I would say, ask someone, do you want a ticket? Come with me.
Yeah.
If I had a spare.
Yeah, it's sold out though. So no.
Okay.
You
fair
get yourself
enough.
a double pass to Taylor Swift, mate, and you'll have many people who want to take you to the MCG.
That's right. In an ideal world, I would follow someone. If I didn't and I had to get there reasonably quickly, I'd get a taxi.
Okay. So then today you get a taxi to our studio.
Yes.
And then Saul can guide you into the building of where you want to go. But how do you know which building it is, if that makes sense?
Amelia met me at the taxi.
Okay. So you have point of contact. But also you could say to the cab driver, where's number 1112?
Yep.
And he'll say that way, mate. And you can, from there, Saul's got you and you can get there together. Is that right?
No.
Okay.
No. Any new travel route that I take, and I will be taking regularly, I get trained in.
Great. Okay. Good to know.
So, for example, if my son changes school, or I start a new job, or I join a new gym, and I'm going there regularly, guide dogs will come out and train me with Saul, as they have done. Now Saul is my bona fide guide dog, and we're a team. I now go to the gym twice a week, and it's a 3K walk.
And Saul can memorize that now because his daddy's sick.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
And that was after about 6 or 7 thorough training sessions with GDV. And then the final one, they follow me. And if they're comfortable with me doing it independently, they sign me off.
Okay, great. So you'd pick, as you said, 5 activities, say, or whatever that you're going to do religiously and do it a lot. And they're the ones that Saul can train in. And everything else is about protection when you're out and about. Like if you got dropped off here, he's not going to obviously walk you on the road in front of a car, whatever it is, because they're always trained in that. Gotcha.
They're trained to avoid hazards and obstacles. And he's done that many a time in the last 5 months. Cars reversing out of driveways.
And he'll stop you. Great, mate. Love that. Great,
Yeah.
because we haven't got in as in depth with this on this podcast. So, and I get asked a lot of questions around guide dogs and people who are blind and low vision. I said, don't ask me.
Yeah.
Ask someone who does it. So it's great to get that first-hand lived experience, brother.
The dogs are phenomenally trained, absolutely phenomenally trained. And the first objective was to keep themselves, the dog, and the handler safe.
Yeah, not all dogs are phenomenally trained. My dog has a lot of work to do.
Sauce needs a lot of work. GDV would have a field day.
Can you help me out with Sauce, mate? Can you whip him into shape?
I think GDV and their dogs do set the bar, as well as Cedar, of course.
Sauce has the lowest bar in the world, and that's because of his parents, i.e. me.
Rory, Gideon is not here today. He has retired.
He has.
But can you tell everyone what happens, or at least the first option that happens when a guide dog does end service? Also, how it's decided they are to end service, and the process of getting your next dog like Saul.
So in August, maybe September of last year, I noticed that Gideon was slowing down, being less attentive, getting a bit more distracted. And that became obvious on my travel route to and from the gym, i.e. we didn't find the bridge, so we couldn't cross over 4 lanes of traffic, couldn't find the button to cross the road, all of which is fundamental to traveling safely. So guide dogs, I phoned guide dogs, they came out very quickly to assess, and they said, look, Rory, they gave me some short-term strategies to temporarily rectify that situation, which did work. But they said to me, or this particular lady said to me, she said, look, Rory, Gideon's almost 10. He was 10 in May this year. And if you think about him being a grandfather, and he's been looking after his child, i.e. the handler, for the last 8.5 years, he's been doing it 7 days a week. He's now 10. He can't do it 7 days a week. He can do it 2 days a week. I thought that was a very good and interesting analogy of him slowing down gracefully, still wants to work because he's been so wonderfully well trained, and we have that rapport and that relationship, but he just can't do it anymore. To his credit, he always kept me safe. Never felt unsafe with Gideon. And I don't feel unsafe, never felt unsafe with Saul. But there was going to come a time, potentially, because of his attention dropping off and his lack of constant confidence falling away a little bit, that he may no longer be able to keep us safe. And that's, of course, when it becomes dangerous. So the decision was that Gideon would retire, but the question was, how long was that going to take? They told me in October of last year, it would probably be April until at the earliest that a suitable dog would become available. Unknowing to me, they didn't tell me the whole truth. Saul hadn't qualified, but they thought if Saul did qualify, then he would be a good fit for me. I was away overseas for Christmas last year, had an email from my instructor saying, hi, Rory, I think we might have a dog for you. And I immediately went, great, that's fantastic, but I'm in London. She knew I was away. We agreed to meet. She came to the house with Saul, met Gideon. I spent an hour and a half doing one of my regular walks around my local area with Saul. It worked really well. She thought it was a good fit. I then went into class with Saul on the 31st of January and came home with him on the 10th of February, which is when Gideon officially retired. As a guide dog handler, you have first refusal for what happens to your retired guide dog. Some people don't have the space for a second dog. Some people can't afford the food and the vet bills and so on and so forth. Thankfully, I can cover that, and I have a big enough house. Gideon remains at home with us.
I love that.
Are they mates?
They are. And they're also making good friends with a new dog in the house. We have a third dog.
Mate, can you stop getting dogs? Jeez.
Well, see, we have
What's the other dog? Is it?
It's a Bernese mountain dog.
Oh, I'm guessing that one's not as well trained as the other two.
No, we're currently getting him trained.
Yeah.
He's got some good educators around him, though, if he listens.
Can you walk the dogs while walking the dog, if that makes sense? If you're with Saul, can you go for a walk with Billy?
I wouldn't risk it.
I was going to say, there'd be a bit going on.
It could be a little bit crazy.
I'm sorry, but if anybody walked past a blind person getting walked by their dog while walking dogs, that is
Yeah.
gold. You'd be like, that guy, he's loving it.
It might be a bit risky.
Yeah, I reckon, mate. Yeah.
Rory, thank you so much for your learnings today. We always finish our podcast with a segment called The Bowl of Uncomfortable. It's a question that somebody sent us, whether it be directly about you, knowing that you come in on the podcast, or maybe just about your disability in general.
Okay.
We have one each today.
Yeah, I'll go first from Amanda on Instagram. Have you ever caught your kids trying to get away with something you said no to because you can't see them?
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe they got away with it because you couldn't see them. But have you ever heard about it?
Well, usually, you have to stuff a pillow under the doona to pretend you're asleep. But with your kids, they at least have to just maybe put a snoring machine on to pretend.
Ferris Bueller, you reckon?
Yeah.
A bit of biffo kicks off and, oh, no, it was him, Dad. It was him, Dad. No, Ollie did that. No. So I can't tell who started what and who did what when and who instigated it and I said, no, I'm finishing it.
Yeah, good.
Stop, done.
Good way to do it, both in trouble.
Yeah.
Always a good way to do it.
Yeah.
But no, my boys, thankfully, to my knowledge, have always been pretty good
Like that.
from that perspective.
Nice. Second question comes in from Jake, who is one of our top contributors on Facebook. So thank you very much to you,
Good on
Jake.
you,
He's got a
Jake.
little badge on his name, which is good. I've heard on this podcast the question asked, if you could see again for 5 minutes, etc., what would you want to see? I'd like to know something that you're glad to never see again.
Great question, Jake.
Manchester United winning the Premier League,
Hey, good one.
as I'm an Arsenal fan.
Like that.
Yeah.
Look, in this world we live in today, there's things in this world one would rather not see, in terms of violence and horrendous activities and all that sort of stuff. The terror in young kids' faces about not knowing where mum or dad is and all that sort of stuff. And that doesn't necessarily come from war. It could be a natural disaster such as an earthquake or a typhoon or something that the earth brings to the planet. Violence and hideous behaviour is something that I'm pleased that I will never encounter again visually.
Mate, thank you for coming in. Big ups to you. I haven't Saul
You haven't
is here.
seen Saul, yeah.
Saul is down there.
He is.
You know what they say, when you got a problem, better call Saul.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Gentlemen, thank you for having me.